Hi, Roisin. Welcome to the Healing After Infant Loss YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming on here and for sharing your story today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive in with you.
So, if we start off with sort of the backstory, so you're married. Do you want to tell me a little bit about you and your husband, how you met, when you got married,
Yeah,
that kind of thing?
yeah. I'll try and keep it short because I tend to waffle a little bit. But yeah, I I'm from Belfast originally. Like went to uni there and stuff, and then finished uni and decided wanted to go traveling. Did like a bit of traveling for like a year or so. Went back home. I was in Australia, so I was doing like the working holiday visa thing. Went back out and I kind of had already known my husband. We could sort of did like a little bit of work together. He was friends with my brother who had like followed me out to Australia,
Okay.
and we we both went back to like the farm basically that we were doing work on just to save a bit of money, second year visa, and then we were like friends. We kind of knew each other, so we were working together like 12-hour shifts. So and it was just us on like the little bit that we were working on. Sometimes there was other people in and out. And yeah, just got to know each other. We were like really friendly for like a good couple of months, and then just blossomed into a romantic relationship. And then we did like a good bit of traveling, lived in Darwin for a little while, and then both returned home to study again. So that's when I did like my counselling
Mm.
masters. So just started that in 2015 in Nottingham. My husband did like civil engineering, so he did that because the whole idea was to go back to Australia at the
Okay.
time. So that was our like get into Australia card. And yeah, so we went back, we did our studying, and then we both finished, and COVID hit. So
Mm.
Australia closed the borders, and we didn't have like a huge community in Nottingham, so we moved up north to where my husband's from, in Cumbria. And yeah, we decided to like try for a baby, got pregnant pretty quickly, like within a couple of months of trying. Yeah, so that's kind of our shortened version of our background story. Yeah.
Was it both something that you kind of talked about early on in your relationship that you both wanted children?
No, I don't ever really remember talking about. I think I've always known, like I always wanted to be a mum, just like
Mm.
something I always kind of had in mind. And yeah, I don't even remember when we sort of. It was kind of just, I think Australia shutting the borders was sort of like, what now? What do we do now? And then we knew that they probably weren't going to be open for a year or so, and then we were engaged, you see, and we weren't really big on like weddings and stuff. We were kind of like, yeah, whatever, like it's fine. And we just thought, well, let's try and have a family first, and then we can always do the wedding and traveling thing afterwards. I suppose we were seeing it as like a bit of an opportunity of having family close by,
Yeah.
starting a family and having support. So we kind of looked at it that way. And I think he probably, I don't know, I've never really asked him actually, but I think I assume, I hope he's always wanted children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then
yeah.
so you got pregnant, and did you get pregnant pretty quickly and pretty easily? And was that kind of like a, oh, I'm pregnant, wow, everything's going to be amazing kind of thing? Yeah.
Pretty much. We were very lucky. Yeah. And I suppose when you're in it and when you're trying for the first time, you don't necessarily, you're not in the world of like, unless you have people close to you who
Mhm.
have had infertility struggles or, have had loss. I suppose you just dive in head first and don't think that you're going to be the person. So yeah, we were really lucky. I don't remember when we like, I think it was around June time. We went off contraception and stuff, and then I think I found out I was pregnant like November, like the 11th of November. So yeah, so it was pretty. What's that like? July, August, September, October. Yeah, within like 4 months, 5 months.
And then did you
Yeah.
have a pretty smooth pregnancy at the beginning and the middle and kind of up until obviously?
Yeah, very early on, I had like a little bit of spotting, and obviously for pregnancy, you're like, oh my goodness, like what's going on? You haven't got a clue. Went and got like a private scan, and they said everything was fine. We seen the baby, and yeah, from then it was kind of all quite smooth sailing, really. Everyone I was low risk, like there was no issues, nothing was ever picked up. Like, yeah, it was all, and I was like really lucky. I was never sick or anything like that. I had like a little bit of nausea for like a week. So I was like that person everyone hated. They were like, oh, look at this gal. Like,
Yeah.
she's her pregnancy glowing,
Yeah.
poster child. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it was fine. Like, I didn't have any issues. Yeah.
And then sadly you lost your baby boy in May 2021. How many
Mm-hmm.
weeks along were you and how did that process happen?
Yeah, so I lost him. We were 31 weeks, so
Um,
pretty near the end. Yeah. Um, So like with his pregnancy, obviously I'm saying yeah everything was fine, but I suppose in hindsight you've got so much more information and you learn so much more, don't you? But yeah, so like my bump was pretty small, but I'm quite like small anyway, so I just thought like, oh well, I was quite into exercise and stuff. I thought like, well, I'm just not like huge, like whatever. And then yeah, I had a few friends who were a couple of weeks ahead of me, and they were literally like 4 weeks and 3 weeks ahead of where I was, like two of my
Mhm.
quite good friends. And so I remember them like talking about the baby moving and, like all the sensations they were feeling. And I was like, well, I am like a couple of weeks behind, whatever. And I did like, yeah, like I kind of had the sense of like he wasn't a super active baby. But of course, I had nothing to compare it to. So I was just kind of like, it is what it is. And when I mentioned it to like the midwives and stuff, they were like, yeah, like that's normal for your baby, not every baby's the same and whatever. So yeah, that kind of was always sort of there lingering, and then I wasn't huge, and like I always remember, because people love to comment like
Yeah.
strangers and stuff like, oh, you're so neat, like you're so small, you're so,
Mhm.
and I'd be like, oh, okay, like, you know fine. I didn't know any different, and you almost like people like think it's like a compliment or something,
Yeah.
and so you kind of just absorb it as like, oh, okay, well that is just how my body is looking pregnant. Yeah, so I did actually go for reduced movement. So I've wrote a little note because I sometimes forget things. But yeah, I went in for like reduced movements when I was about 24 weeks because obviously by that point I'd like there was like a consistent pattern, and I went in. But yeah, I like it was all a bit not maybe done as thoroughly as it should have been. And I was kind of just checked and told everything's fine. And obviously you kind of just believe, don't you, that everything's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so it went in, and then obviously was reassured. Had like community midwife appointments. Everything seemed fine according to them. Like everything was fine. And then we'd gone on just like a little bit of a camping trip for like our final trip before baby had arrived. And yeah, when I got back, I was back to work that day and kind of was like, oh, I just don't know that I've really felt the baby moving a huge amount. And then I started to like get worried, and they tell you all the stuff like drink the juice, which do not do. Like if you ever have any concerns, go straight into the emergency, like get the support that you need. But I was trying all the things anyway because I didn't like know that you weren't supposed to. But sort of did that for about 10 minutes or so and was like, yeah, I'm not super happy. So rang the midwife and they were like, yeah, come in for checks. And
Mm.
I'd went in, and it was kind of still sort of COVID-y times where your partner had to kind of wait up the corridor sort of thing. So Jamie, my husband, had to wait like outside of the room, and I went in and they were doing, the Doppler, and she couldn't obviously find, he had passed by this point, so she couldn't find the heartbeat. And she was picking up my heartbeat obviously, but she said, oh, sometimes these aren't working. I'll get another one. Got another one, and she was like, oh, let's just go for a scan, because I was getting obviously really worked up by that point. I was getting quite stressed. She was like, I'm just going to go and get Jamie and we'll just go for a scan, because sometimes like it's just hard whatever way they're lying. And I suppose at that point I was upset and I was crying, but I was kind of like, I didn't necessarily think, oh yeah, he's passed away. Like I just, that wasn't in my realm of thought. I just thought he's lying awkwardly, or the machine's not working or whatever. So Jamie came in and obviously saw that I was really upset and was like, it's okay, like, it's gonna be fine. And I think he was just like, what are you so upset for? So we went
Yeah.
into the scanning, but I assume by this point the midwife knew that obviously the baby had passed, and obviously there was other people in triage, because you're brought into the little triage, so it's like little rooms. There was other women there, so obviously they didn't want to distress anyone else, so they knew obviously by this point. But I sort of wish someone had just given me the heads up
Yeah.
that potentially this is going to be the case, but they didn't. And so they scanned me, and then I seen like Arlo, our little boy, and I just knew there was no heartbeat. I could see that there was no heartbeat. Um, and yeah, so they told us obviously, well, you probably hear it all the time, like there's no heartbeat. And I remember that like it's like a primal energy that comes out like screaming. And I'm sure like God love the people next door to me and for their normal scans and routines, because everyone must have heard me. But yeah, they obviously told it. And I remember just saying like, oh, can you just check again? Can you just check again? Like you must have got it wrong. Can you just make sure? Can you just make sure? And
Mm.
obviously like the sonographer knew obviously like he'd passed, and she did it again for me and said, yeah, look, I'm really sorry, like there's no heartbeat. And I think like you just, I was going into that appointment just thinking like, oh, maybe there's something like going on, or maybe he's just lying awkwardly. You just don't go in and think that you're going to be told that. And I suppose you're so close to the end by that point, because you know if he had been born, like potentially he would have been fine with staying in the NICU or whatever. And yeah, so that's kind of how our story evolved. And then in that moment, you're kind of just catapulted into this world of loss that you've just never even heard of. I suppose I was very naive to everything. Um, I don't want to say it in case I offend anyone, but I don't even think anyone close to me had had like a miscarriage or any type of loss that I was aware of. There was someone, but I suppose I like thinking about her now. You kind of think it happens to other people, don't you? You never like actually
Yeah.
anticipate it's going to happen to you. Yeah, so that's kind of what happened.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, it was tough. Yeah.
So then did you, just in terms of giving birth and things, were you induced, and did you had to give birth, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I suppose after that, then you're kind of like ushered into a little room, aren't you? And you're obviously
Mm.
you meet with a consultant and people who breathe. Well, I don't know if we didn't meet the bereavement midwife at that point actually, but yeah, you're just kind of through. I think just the shock and I remember they left us for like probably half an hour, and I suppose they were probably just letting the shock kind of be absorbed. And I remember just thinking, what the hell is going on? Like, what are we supposed to do? And it's so funny now thinking back, because I had a therapy set, like my own personal therapy that afternoon, obviously not related. I remember like texting my therapist being like, "Hi, I'm so sorry I can't make the session. Our baby's like died." And now, because I'm obviously a therapist, now I think, fucking hell, if I received that text, like, you'd just be like, what the hell, my poor therapist, like, but you're just so in shock that you're like, you don't know what to do. And yeah, they obviously like told us what could happen, and they kind of just give you the option of if you want to be induced or I think I think that was the only option. I don't remember ever talking about like a C-section or anything, but I think they kind of said that's the best kind of course of action, and you sort of just go with it at that point because you don't know what the hell's going on. But I do remember like a really difficult point of them giving you like 2 tablets to take, obviously to start the induction process, and then and I just remember that being the hardest thing, like having to take those tablets, because then it kind of reaffirmed that this is real, because these tablets will harm my baby. But obviously there was nothing that you could do um to not harm him because he'd already passed. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was really hard. And then they kind of just send you on your way. Like they're like, okay, well you're gonna come back in 2 days time, and
Oh, okay.
they give you like leaflets and information. You're just standing with like papers, envelopes. You obviously, I think I got my blood tested, like my blood taken, and like a urine sample and swabs and stuff done. Like I actually can't even remember. I think I did. I think I was just so in such a
Yeah.
shock. But got all that done, and then they're like, yeah, okay, like off you go, pretty much, and come back at whatever time in the morning in 2 days time. And yeah, and obviously you've got to walk back through the ward and then back through the corridor where all the people, because it's in our hospital, it's the same like where you go for scans and routine appointments, and it's the same point obviously where I was going. So you got to walk past, and I remember like going out the double doors, and obviously loads of pregnant people just sitting waiting for their scans, and like a little boy being with his mum. And I remember just he was only like probably about 1, and I just remember like burst into tears. But yeah, and then obviously had to like leave the hospital. I remember we just sat in our car like going, what
Yeah, what?
what has just happened? Like, and then yeah, then we had to obviously ring parents and stuff like that. Yeah.
So you had 2 days then to kind of, I was going to say process, but I don't think you can process that in two. I don't know how you process that. What did you do for 2 days? Just
Oh,
sit and wait. And,
I
yeah.
my family don't live in Belfast, and obviously I'm in Cumbria, so I actually rang my mum in the hospital car park, like we were quite close, and told her obviously, and she obviously like, how do you process that information as someone's mum. So her and my dad like flew over. I want to say that evening, maybe the next day, maybe. I think maybe they flew over the next day. I can't actually remember. but yeah, like, and the worst thing is we obviously came home, and I think, I don't know if it was that morning or the morning before, the car seat had been delivered. So like we literally opened our door and it was just sat there, and obviously the car seat's got like the baby in the car seat on, you know, in the picture. I remember just being like, oh my god, the pram was like sitting, and you're just like into this quiet house where you just don't want to be, obviously. Yeah, I don't, like, my parents come over the next day, but I don't remember. Well, I do remember that night. I think I just went to bed and cried, like, for probably that whole day, and then the next day. But yeah, you're so conscious because like you don't even want to go out of the house, because if anyone mentions
Yeah.
to you, and then obviously like, oh, you expecting, or oh, you know. And I
Yeah.
remember just being at home, not, you know, even when I was going out, making sure, because we live in like a little village, which is lovely, but everyone knows everyone. So
Mm.
there was a, like, looking out the door to make sure nobody was coming whenever we were leaving again. Yeah, and then I think, yeah, we just it's mad, isn't it? Because nobody talks about this part of, like, you literally have to go home and know that your baby's passed away within you. You're carrying him, like, well, him or her, it was him in our case, but you're carrying your baby, and you know that they've passed away and they're still within you.
Yeah.
And then there's all the fear of like, well, what is going to happen? What are they going to look like? How, like, it's going to be really difficult. You know, what if I'm like afraid of them? What, you know, you have all these thoughts, don't you? Whenever you don't know
Yeah.
what you're going to do. And I have to say, like, we weren't really given a huge amount of like support as we left the hospital. So I don't think we even had all those questions answered. But I do think the bereavement midwife did ring me at one point within those days, and we talked about stuff. But I mean, I think you're just so in shock that you probably don't even absorb any of the
Yeah.
information, you know. So yeah, so we went in then. I think that happened on the Wednesday. We found out that Arlo had passed, and then yeah, and then it was like naming him as well, because we couldn't settle on a boy's name. And then we were just lying in bed and we were like, well, we need to name this baby. Like, he's going to be here tomorrow and we've no name for him. And then you feel bad because you're kind of like looking at your names and going, well, this baby's passed away, and are we going to give him the name that we liked? And, you know, and then you're kind of like, well, it's all these realistic things that people don't actually talk about, you know. And then I think we had Arlo on our list and both had liked it, but it wasn't like number one. And then we were like, actually really like, I said to Jamie, I actually really like Arlo. And he was like, I was thinking Arlo. And then we kind of just agreed on it, and that was it. That was like the end of the conversation. So we kind of knew then going in. I suppose it went in hindsight, and like knowing everything I know now, I suppose that was us trying to regain a little bit of control in
Yeah.
trying to like name him, and, you know, honor him as the little person that he was. So yeah, then we went in the Friday morning and were left for quite a while. Actually, the bereavement midwife came in, and I suppose in a way they're trying to like let you just settle into the situation, aren't they? Or maybe they were busy. I don't know. It's what I'm telling myself. Who knows? Maybe they were just, maybe we forgot about. But no, the bereavement midwife was excellent. Like, I have to say, she was amazing. She was so lovely, such a beautiful person. And that really helped, like, having someone. And she was obviously midwife, so she delivered Arlo and stuff too. So she was there from the morning right up to
Yeah.
the delivery, that like towards the evening time. So yeah, so I was induced, and yeah, it all happened very quickly because Arlo was actually growth restricted, which we didn't know until he was delivered.
Okay.
So he was quite small. Um, and yeah, so kind of I was in the stage of labor, like, of like, this baby's like coming, and the midwife's like, oh no, like, you're definitely not there yet. And then I was like, no, like, I'm there. And then literally he was born like a minute later on the bed, like, literally.
Wow.
Yeah, so I can't, you kind of know, I was just like, no, no, this baby's coming, like. And then obviously that was him. But then when he was born, they were obviously quite shocked. Like, the midwife was really shocked because he was so small. He
Mm.
wasn't like the size of a 31-week-old baby. So yeah, yeah. So it was obviously, and I think you think back and you think, how did I get through that labor? Like,
Mm.
because, you know, with normal labor, you kind of have the goal of, well, my baby's going to be here and safe, and I'm going to have my baby to bring home with me. But with that, you're just kind of there going, well, I don't know what the end result is going to be, because, you know, you don't, I suppose in your head you can't imagine what they're going to be like, even though they're still your baby. So yeah.
Have an epidural or any kind of pain meds for the labour?
Yeah, I didn't have an epidural. I had like morphine and codeine and paracetamol. yeah, but I didn't get like an epidural or anything. So yeah,
And then
yeah. I mean, it was quite intense, but
did you get to spend time with him afterwards?
yeah, we did. So he obviously they like dressed him and did all the stuff and wrapped him up and things. And yeah, my mum and dad were obviously over here from Belfast, and then Jamie's mum and dad were here. So we spent like an hour or so with him, and then my mum and dad and Jamie's mum and dad came in and met him, which was lovely actually, and we got some photos and stuff. But I think thinking back, I just wish I had done it so differently, you know. And I just wish I had have like had more time with him and took more photos and like not been in my big dressing gown. Like, you know, I wish I had have like, because obviously, I don't know if you've heard of Remember My Baby. They
No.
like do photography sessions in the UK, and it's like volunteer photographers who go in and they take photos of families who have lost their babies. And so like I see people on social media who've got all these gorgeous photos of their babies and of them and together, and I just think, oh god, ours are on like an iPhone bloody 10 or something, you know. And like just and I, you know, because obviously things moved on technology wise since 2021. But yeah, so I do have regrets, but then also it's kind of that thing of you just didn't know at the time what was possible, and you didn't even think. And they were really good, like they did handprints and footprints and you know, all things like that. So and we did obviously get photos of him. But um yeah, we spent some time. We spent probably a couple of hours with him, probably like 5 hours or so in total, maybe more, I don't know. But yeah, so that was it. And then I think I just wanted to leave the hospital, to be honest. I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to stay. Like, I just was spent. I think I just needed to get out of there. Which also is like a regret, because I kind of wish that I had have spent like a lot more time with him. But you know, it is what it is. And I think at that point, you've been through so much in like a couple of days that you just need to do what's right for you in the moment. So we checked. I was gonna say we checked out. We left the hospital at like probably like close to midnight that night. Arlo was born at like just before 6 o'clock or so, about 5:30ish. Yeah. So um yeah, so that was, we spent time with them. And just like, it was nice though, like with my mum and dad being there. They only stayed for probably about 40 minutes or so, and then Jamie and I had the rest of the time with them. But it was nice for them to like see him and hold him, and I think it was like more real then for them, like
Mm.
you know, sometimes when people have experienced loss and other people don't, or even the people involved don't get to meet the baby, it can be really challenging to kind of, you know, hold him in mind for family and stuff. So I like really appreciated that that was possible for us.
Yeah. And then did you have a funeral or some kind of ceremony or something?
Yeah, so we decided to get Arlo cremated because obviously we didn't know if we were going to be staying here. So we
Mm.
were planning, and probably plan still is to not to move away, but we didn't want to kind of bury him and then not have, you know, him somewhere where we could like visit or whatever. So we got him cremated. He had to have like a post-mortem as well, because obviously they didn't know what had happened. So it's tough as well, the post-mortem, because in Cumbria they don't do them here, so he had to go to Newcastle.
Mm.
And I find that so challenging, like knowing that he was like being transported on his own to Newcastle. Yeah, it's funny that that's the bit that I'm getting upset about, isn't it? But yeah, so you almost like, I think your like motherly instinct just kicks in, doesn't it? You just want to be with him and like protect him and like make sure people are treating him respectfully and stuff, which I'm sure they all were. You know, like I was told like he will be treated with respect and, you know, thought about and stuff. So yeah, so it took a little while for that all to happen. So yeah, his funeral was in June then, like just started June. It didn't take that long to happen, probably about a week. But I think when you're in that space, you feel like it's forever. Like I remember just feeling like it was probably like months, and it was probably only about a week that he was at Newcastle. But yeah, so we got him cremated, and then we had a funeral just at like the local what is it even called? Little like crematorium, is it?
Yeah, like a
Uh,
funeral home.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's all different here, isn't it? Like than in Belfast. So yeah, and just Jamie and I went to that, which was actually a really tough choice. But I think at the moment I was so like exhausted from the grief and everyone's pity, I want
Yeah.
to say, and like obviously having your parents over at a time when you're kind of trying to grieve and, you know, figure everything out is overwhelming in itself. So I think the thought of them having to come back over and then everyone else coming over here and like having to kind of hold people when they're not, you know, in their own space or whatever, which no one would have ever expected of me. But I think at the time I was just like, I just want to do this ourselves. So we just, Jamie and I went, and then we just had it was only like a half an hour, not, I don't even know if it was half an hour, like little ceremony. But it was nice because it felt like, okay, well, this is his like little send off from us. And then we went and did like a walk, a hike in the lakes after that, just
Oh.
Jamie and I. So that was nice. Yeah. So we kind of came home, got changed, and then went straight there and did that. Just as like a little bit of a, I suppose at the time we were probably just trying to do something to shift all that energy, but for us it was kind of like, let's go and do something that we enjoy and mark the occasion rather than it being like a really sad
Yeah.
thing. It was really sad, but yeah, so that's kind of what we did for him. Yeah.
How did you two process the grief? Because I hear oftentimes that husband and wife kind of process things a lot differently. Did you find that was the case with you two as well?
Yeah, 100%, definitely. And I think because of the work that I do, I'm a lot more in my feelings and a lot more kind of wanting to talk about everything and wanting to like delve into the whys and the emotions. And Jamie's just very kind of like what's like he would think about things quite logically. Obviously like he did like civil engineering, so he's got that kind of mindset where he's quite logical and like next step sort of person. But yeah, I think for me, I obviously was just devastated, and so was he, you know. And I think we both dealt with it very differently. I'm not kind of the person who would like lie in bed anyway, like that wouldn't be how I would grieve. But I think for me, I just really struggled with like, what do I do? And I think I kind of latched on to him as like my support system. I obviously didn't have like my family around me here, or like us, like my friendship group who I'm quite close with, who would be in Belfast. So I think for me, I just kind of latched onto him. But for him, he wanted to go, he works for himself, so he wanted to go back to his workshop, which he like made me go with him. Like it was literally like a few days after like I'd given birth to Arlo, and he was like, right, we're going to the workshop. And I remember just being like, what do you mean we're going to the workshop? And he's like, no, come on, it'll be good for you, we'll get out of the house, we'll go like to the workshop. And yeah, we were just kind of doing that, and like I was just helping him with what he was doing and doing bits and pieces around the workshop. And it was probably quite good because he like you're using your hands and stuff, and like obviously we're in that space together and just, you know, probably quietly in the space, I imagine. I can't remember talking a huge amount. And I did that for him for a couple of weeks, and then obviously I just kind of I went back to work really early actually as well. Probably after about 6 weeks or so, I went back to work because he'd obviously went back to work. And then when I wasn't at work with him, I was just sat in the house on my own. And I just remember thinking like, what am I supposed to do here? You know? And I like would have went for walks and stuff, but I think I just needed to throw my mind into something else. It's funny because like I know like a lot of people, well, especially the women in the relationship, don't necessarily go back to work straight away or whatever. But I think for me it was actually quite helpful, and I think because I sit with other people's problems for a living, it was good to like find that balance of like I'm not sitting with my own stuff so much. But I didn't go back to work full time. Like I went back part time, and probably wasn't able to kind of hold the amount of people I would have previously. So yeah, we healed very differently. Like I always wanted to talk about it and like delve into it and like speak about it, whereas he just he dealt with it in a more quiet way. Didn't necessarily feel the need to. Like he would have always supported me and listened to me and what I needed to talk about, but yeah, for him it was just very different.
Yeah, I hear that quite often, that it's often very different and it can be quite frustrating or confusing because you're like, why aren't they doing the same thing I'm doing? Why aren't they grieving the same way? It can be quite like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a tricky point in your relationship because you don't quite understand the other person and they're not doing the thing that you want them to do. And yeah.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And I think there's a sense of like people can get really caught up in they don't care about it, you know. And obviously, like we're speaking quite broadly, aren't we? Because I know there's obviously people who deal with it differently, like lots of women different and deal with it differently, males deal, and there's like same sex couples and stuff. But like obviously, generally, I think I hear a lot as well that like people deal with it very differently, and then often the woman can feel like in like hetero relationships that he doesn't care. He's just moving on. He's not as bothered about it. Like, how can he not feel this? And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, because it's more about them not feeling heard and feeling seen and feeling like validated in their grief. But I think probably because of the work that I do, I kind of recognize that we sort of were grieving very differently, and I kind of was just let that play out. I don't think I ever, there were obviously moments where I felt like, oh, you know, why are you not talking about it? But I don't remember ever feeling like resentment or anything like that, you know. But yeah, it's such a tricky thing to navigate, isn't it? Like, people just deal with everything so differently.
I think the thing is as well, there's no guidebook on how to deal with something like this, because it just kind of shouldn't happen, and it does, and you're just kind of thrown in there. You're just like, well, what the fuck is going on? Literally, what am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah, I know. A guidebook would be nice, wouldn't it? A little aid, aid to Z.
Step one, do this.
Step
Okay,
two.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? Because I suppose everyone is so different anyway. Like, your upbringing, your culture, like the support systems that you have around you is going to negate how you deal with grief. You know, that's going to be a massive factor in it. And suppose, you know, you might think you're going to deal with it a certain way, and then it just might blow up. And you know, for a lot of people, it can bring up like other stuff. You know, other grief and loss that they've experienced in life too, and that can just feel really heavy. So yeah, it's not such a hard thing to go through, no. And I think for relationships, it can be really hard because you're both trying to look after each other and trying to support each other, and then also trying to like feel seen and heard and validated. And it can just be, yeah, it can be tough. So, mm,
You mentioned that you did a autopsy. Did you get results back from that? And
yeah.
if you want to share or not, I don't know. It's up to you. But
Yeah, we did postmortem. It took quite a while to come back. Like, I can't remember now how long, but I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, like, this is just awful how long this is taking. But yeah, the results came back, and there were blood clots in the placenta, and also that the umbilical cord was long, so it was like longer than a usual umbilical cord, and it was hypercoiled, which means, like, you know, the way it's like wrapped around the it was wrapped around way more times than a usual coil would have been. And then because it was long, that kind of stopped then when there was blood clots in the placenta, that obviously affected the blood flow and the nutrition flow to Arlo. And then because the umbilical cord was so long and the hypercoil, had to work super hard to get up to him, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So at some point that kind of failed, and obviously then he wasn't getting the blood and the, you know, all the stuff that he needed, the nutrients and things. So that was the findings within it, but chromosomally, and like, he was fine. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. He was absolutely perfect. So it was just a placenta issue, which then is just so hard in itself as well, because, you know,
there was
the
no real
yeah,
reason, like no real problem, I guess.
no,
Yeah.
no, yeah, it was just,
Is that something that's common in pregnancies or with stillbirths? And
you know, I don't know. I do hear like a lot of placenta issues with people. I don't know that I've heard necessarily people having clots in their placenta, but I know that like a lot of people have what is it, when the placenta like abruption, and that can cause obviously stillbirth, because that has to be treated like very quickly, I think. And then um yeah, so I'm not too sure. They didn't sort of, well, I don't remember if they give us sort of percentages or anything as to how common it was. But yeah, I mean, I definitely never heard of it, or I haven't since really heard of anyone having blood clots in their placenta, you know.
and did they tell you that's something that could happen again because it's already happened once, or is it like it's happened once, don't worry about it for future pregnancies?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was nothing, because they checked me for like clotting disorders and, you know, things like with my blood, and anything that wasn't maybe picked up, and there was nothing. So they just said, just one of those things, like it's very unlikely that that would happen again in another pregnancy. They couldn't really answer why. I think they just sort of said, well, some placentas are formed really well and then others aren't for whatever reason, you know. They couldn't really say why it would happen, why it happened, but they were quite reassuring that it wouldn't happen again. But I suppose you don't trust you when they tell you that. You're kind of like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you don't really believe that you're ever gonna that's not gonna happen again, I suppose, if you go and try again. Yeah.
So that was in May 2021, and
Yeah.
then you got pregnant again and had your daughter in June 2022. How long did
Yeah.
you wait before getting pregnant? I can't do the maths, but also like what was the like? Was there like a switch in your mind when you were like, okay, I'm ready to try again? Or was it kind of like, oh my God, quick, get pregnant. I need to,
Yeah,
was it like, yeah.
it was
I
instant. Like,
see people going either way. It's either like, oh my God, I need to wait 5 years, or
yeah,
get on it quick. I need to like do this again. I need to be
yeah,
pregnant
yeah. And I think for me, it was more of like a trauma response, to be honest. Now that I think about it, I was more like, okay, let's just like put that there and let's just kind of move on, move forward into something else. And I think also the fact that like obviously the goal was to have a baby, and that was like what we wanted. Obviously, then it's highlighted even more when you've like had your baby there with you and they're not alive and you can't bring them home, right? So it's just that sense of it's all of it. It's like a little bit of a mix of everything, isn't it? I think I think we were pretty well. We were going to wait for the blood test to come back and stuff because we obviously wanted to make sure that this
then.
wasn't going to happen again. But I think they just took such a long time, and every time we spoke to people, they were like, "Look, it's probably not going to happen again. Like we have no reason to believe you're not going to go on to have another healthy pregnancy." So I think we just pretty much can't really remember. Like I think probably got my period back, and then we probably started trying again pretty quickly. Which was hard in itself because then you feel like you're almost, well, I felt anyway at the time that we were kind of like replacing him, or that we
Yeah,
weren't grieving as much as we should be, or that we were like, do we love him as much if we're doing this? And obviously all that's not true, but I think you just go over these, and I hear it with clients all the time, like you go through it in your head, don't you, that sense of like, is this the right thing to do? But I think when you do want a baby and that is what you wanted initially, obviously it just didn't work out how you planned, you
yeah,
kind of move on to the next point. So yeah, for us, we started pretty quickly trying again. So Arlo was born in May, and then Nia, we found out we were pregnant with her in October. So yeah, it was pretty well June, July, August, like 5 months. So it took us, and I think I remember at the time just feeling like, oh, this is just so long. Like this is just taking so long, and obviously it's really not in the grand scheme of things at all. But I suppose you're just so heavy in your grief that you just want like an outlet. Then obviously when I found out I was pregnant again, I kind of expected like to feel better, and I just felt a million times worse.
I was going to
So
ask that kind of, if you felt like, oh my God, like
mm,
overwhelming joy, or if it kind of had the opposite effect. Yeah.
yeah, that was it. I remember taking the test, and then Jamie had been out at work, whatever. He came home, and I went down and was like, "Oh, I'm pregnant." It was just in a test, and he was like, "Oh," and he was happy. He's like, "This is great," and then I was like, "Is it?" I remember being like, "Is it?" I think I said that to him, and
Mm.
yeah, I think when I think there's trying, and then when you get pregnant again, there's the reality of like you're opening your world right up to all of this devastation again, and it was very hard for me to believe that she would ever come home. I don't think I ever once throughout the pregnancy visualized her really being at home with us. I kind of made plans for like her dying more than I did for her coming home. Like as I was thinking about, oh, everything I would do differently. I'll get like remember my baby. I'll like do all the photos. I'll get like little clay casts of her. Like that's just the
Yeah.
trauma that you're in. You're like preparing for her death rather than her coming home okay. So it was a very, very difficult pregnancy. We had scans every 2 weeks. Like we were well looked after. I had to take progesterone just as a precaution, just because they obviously were like, you might as well. And then I had to take aspirin as well because of the blood clots. So to make sure that if there were anything that wasn't picked up, that there would be more chance that the placenta would function like better with blood thinning. So yeah, just yeah, we also went to the Tommy's like in Manchester, the Rainbow Clinic with Nia, just to get double checked, just to kind of have another set of eyes on her, and to make sure there's nothing else. I had a low lying placenta with her. I did with Arlo as well. So that was like a bit of a worry about, will it move? Will it not move? But other than that, I mean, the pregnancy was fine really with her. It was just very stressful. Like I just did not have a good time mentally when I was pregnant with her.
I imagine as
Um,
well when you got to the 31-week mark, which is when you lost Arlo, that must have been like, okay, well, I'm ready for it to happen again. Like, did you have that mindset as well? Just kind of like, or I guess, I don't know, you have to tell me, but then also, I guess as weeks go on, every time you're like, oh my God, I made it another week. Oh, it's another week. Oh, did you have that kind
yeah,
of excitement, or was it just
I find it
dreadful?
really hard because obviously with him, we got to 31 weeks and then obviously found out. And then when I got past 31 weeks, I imagined I was going to feel really like happy and like, okay,
Yeah.
well, we've got further. And I just felt devastated because I almost felt like, well, I shouldn't be getting this with another baby. Like, and then I think it just brought up what I didn't get with him, and that sense of moving further away from his timeline as
Mm.
well, which I find so tough because the newer things I had with her, I kind of was like, oh, I didn't have that with him, and this is a whole new experience, and probably more than likely gonna be okay, and I was obviously so hyper aware with movements and went in and got checked as soon as I had any anxiety, like,
Mm.
just worried. I actually didn't go in and get checked that much, to be fair, as I probably thought I would have. But yeah, but even just like as I'm talking, I'm thinking about finding out that she was a girl. That was tough as well, which is a really taboo and hard thing to talk about, I think, because obviously you're absolutely, it's just amazing that you've been able to get pregnant again and you're so elated and feel like we're just so lucky. And then there's the other side of it where you're like, you imagined to a little boy at home, you
Mm.
imagined having that, and like obviously I don't like to play into like the stereotypes, but it is different having a boy and a girl. You imagine different things and different relationship and what that means. And I think finding out it was a girl, I almost was like, I don't know what this will look like. I don't know what this means. And then it also meant that it was, and I knew obviously it was a different pregnancy, but it really highlighted that this is a different experience, which
Mm.
was good in some ways and then really challenging in other ways. Because it
Mm.
almost makes you sort of look at your grief a bit more and be like, yeah, he is dead. He did pass away, and this is a new baby and new experience. So yeah.
And then in terms of giving birth, did that bring up trauma also from giving birth to Arlo, or did you manage to separate them as two separate things?
Yeah, Nia's birth wasn't great, to be honest. So it was a bit of a challenge. So I didn't want to go full term because obviously, like, statistically, I read the further you go along, like, stillbirths are, you're at higher rate and stuff like that. And obviously because you've already had one, then you're statistically like at a higher rate. So I was like, okay, 38 weeks, this baby's like coming. And so I got to 38 weeks and I'd been booked in for an induction.
Okay.
So we went in for the induction, everything kind of ramped up quite quickly with our induction, and then had to get like slowed down. And my waters broke and everything was going fine. I was like 4 centimeters dilated, was ready to get in the birth pool, and I was really wanting it to be a different experience. Like, I really wanted to get in the birth pool, and I really wanted to, like, yeah, like you said, like, separate it a little bit, because yeah, with Arlo, obviously that experience was really just challenging and difficult, but also there was lovely moments too. It wasn't just an awful experience, but with her, I wanted it to be like different, and I wanted to kind of like have the birth that I had wanted with him. And so I tried to do that, but they were checking my cervix and felt something, and they weren't sure if it was her hand, if her hand had got sucked. They said it felt like fingers. So they checked and did a scan, and he was breech, or Nia was breech, sorry. Arlo was also breech, that's why I'm saying he
Yeah.
came out breech, so he was born breech. But Nia's foot was stuck in my cervix, so they were like, okay, we need to like go for an emergency section, like right now, pretty much, before
Mm.
she starts getting distressed. She was absolutely fine, she wasn't distressed at that point, but her foot was stuck. So obviously I was contracting, and then yeah, her little foot was stuck. So yeah, pretty much her birth was straight to an emergency section, which was really stressful, but also at the same time kind of reassuring, because you kind of had everyone around. There were so many medical people in the like surgery, that I felt like, okay, well, something has to go right here. But actually when she was taken out, when she was born, I didn't hear her crying, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh fuck. And then I was like, oh, she's like passed away. I was like, oh my god, this is happening again. And then like they had to like rub her basically, and then she obviously was able to cry, and then she cried, and I just remember feeling like, oh my goodness, like this is just like an outer body experience. And then they obviously like put her on me while I was behind the little screen
Mm.
thing. Yeah, and just feeling like, wow, that we just couldn't believe it that she was here, and she opened her eyes and like looked right at me. It was just so surreal. But I think in that moment, people expect it to be like elation because she's here, and it was, but also the grief just hits you,
Mm.
like, because the last time you held a baby was your baby, was Arlo. So, and then, oh, does she look like him, and she had the same little nose, and all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I think people don't see that side of it. They see the baby and, oh, she's going to be fine now, and me and Jamie are
Yeah.
going to be good, and they don't actually see the grief and how heavy that is to hold in that moment.
I think some people think as well, like once you've experienced infant loss and then you experience a living baby. I mean, I haven't experienced this, so it's just my presumption. But then I think people kind of presume, oh, that'll fix them almost, or that will heal their grief, that'll sort them out because
Mm-hmm.
they've had a living child, they'll be fine. But it's
Yeah,
interesting to hear you saying, well, actually, there was kind of the grief and the joy like living together in that moment.
yeah. If anything, I think it amplified my grief. If
Mm.
it, like having a living baby at home, because obviously there was such a short period of time having like Arlo and then going on to have Nia. Like it was just pretty much a year. She was June and he was May, and yeah, I think you kind of put your grief here somewhere because you're kind of focused on the pregnancy and her getting here safely, and you're working and you're trying to do all the things. And then, if anything, it sort of just highlights what you should have had and what you should have, and you know, it's yeah, it was devastating. Like I found the first few weeks amazing. Like I was in such a like bubble of like joy and high, but also there was moments of just complete and utter like sadness.
Mm.
Yeah,
And she's doing well.
yeah.
Is she 3 now?
Yeah, yeah. She's 3 in June, so she's absolutely fabulous. A little ball of energy.
You got pregnant again and
Mm,
had a miscarriage in 2023. And this was interesting. In your message, you said you didn't know you were pregnant. And
yeah,
it's one of those things that you often hear somebody not knowing they're pregnant and then just like popping out a baby. And you're like, how did you not know you're pregnant? Like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
also,
But I think when you're going through loss or struggles, you're kind of clocking it all the time. You're like, okay, I'm ovulating now. I'm this, I'm this,
yeah,
I'm this. Or,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Talk to me a little bit about that experience, about kind of having a miscarriage but not really knowing you were pregnant, because it's kind of an interesting
Yeah.
place to be in, I think.
So I was breastfeeding her. She was 1, and yeah, period just hadn't returned, just with breastfeeding. And we'd kind of talked about trying again for another baby. So we weren't kind of necessarily like, having using protection or anything. We were kind of just saying like, okay, well, when our period when my period returns, then we'll like think about trying again. And yeah, basically I'd got what I thought was my period then, and obviously because it was my first period in like a while, I was sort of like, oh, this is like a lot, this is like intense. And then just thought, oh, didn't really think anything of it for like a day, and then obviously it ramped up, and I was like, something just isn't right here. I just sort of knew, and then in the back of my mind I thought, oh my goodness, like could I've got pregnant, like maybe the first time I'd ovulated, and then I did a test just to double. It was more to like rule it out. I didn't actually necessarily think that it was. I was kind of just like, I'll just rule it out and then can like think about why it's quite intense. And then obviously came back like really strong positive, and I was just like, oh, well, I don't even know what I did with that information really. I just was like, okay, so this is happening. Obviously, I was already like on day. Maybe I did it the first day. I can't remember if I did it on day 1 or day 2, but I remember just being like, well, obviously it's already happened. There's nothing I can do at this point to like do anything. I called the doctors because basically we were due to go to the Hebrides on like with our van, like on like a 2 week trip, of course, like a day later or something, like 2 days later. And I was like, oh God. So I remember I rang the doctor, and they were like, oh well, come in, we'll like have a look at your cervix, see if it's like whatever. That I think like cervix was open, and they were just like, yeah, like you're miscarrying and whatever. And they were I was like, well look, I'm due to go away, like am I still okay to go and whatever. And they just said, well yeah, just take pain relief. And so I think I was sort of a bit just in shock with it, and didn't really necessarily give myself space to grieve, I suppose, because it was really weird, because after the I don't kind of found out after the
Mm.
fact, so I knew there was like nothing I could do about it. So yeah, we just went on our trip and bled the whole time on our trip, of course. And then we actually left our trip early because the bleeding hadn't tied down or hadn't slowed down, so I just wanted to get checked in case I needed to like get some support or any like surgical management or anything. But it turned out like okay, and it stopped, it tapered off then. So yeah, that was like a weird experience for me to go through that after everything with Arlo, because it kind of happened in a way that I didn't know. I think if I had have obviously if we had have been trying or even not, or had have like found out
Mm.
before, and then I think it would have been a very different feeling. Yeah.
I'm so sorry you experienced that as well. It must have been a bit of a, like you said, a bit of a weird one because you didn't know beforehand and then finding out afterwards. It's kind of a bit of a odd way, I guess, to find out you were pregnant, like as you're bleeding, kind of
Yeah.
miscarrying. Did you
Yeah.
get information about how far along you
Yeah.
were or anything like that?
No, no, I didn't. And that's hard too then, because obviously you kind of assume that you've just ovulated that month before or whatever, but I might not have, but like I
Mm.
don't know. I think just because you obviously haven't had a period, so there's no tracking, you can't track anything, you don't know. So no, I don't know how far along I was, and then I don't really obviously have anything to compare it to if it was like, yeah, I did bleed for quite a while. It was quite intense, but yeah, I've no idea how far along I was. So that's hard as well. But yeah, and I think for us, I think if we had have left it any longer, well, for me anyway, I would have just maybe not, because it was just a lot to put yourself through again, to think about. But I think going into my next pregnancy, I kind of had done like a lot of work. I'd did a lot of therapy. I'd like been sort of trying to like look after myself a bit more, and so I kind of was trying to go into it with like a different mindset in a way. I mean, it was still obviously pretty stressful, but yeah. So I think we kind of were like, okay, well, let's like try again then, and then I think we got pregnant pretty soon again after that. In August, then the August we got pregnant, so like at the very end of the
Mm.
August, so like not even 2 months later. So
And then
yeah.
that pregnancy, you had your son in April 2024. How did that
Hmm.
pregnancy compare to the second one? And in terms of because he was a boy, did you feel they connected to
Hmm.
Arlo, or was it kind of really hard with having a boy? And how did you process that?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was very different experience, because I suppose I had Nia there, so there was sort of a sense of like hope a little bit that I knew it could happen, but I also had the experience that it might not
Mm.
happen. And I knew from the very start that he was a boy. Like I just knew straight away because of this very similar symptoms to Arlo, because I had like quite like about a week of like quite bad nausea with Arlo, around 8 weeks or so. And same with this with Sonny. But I had like just very similar cravings for like salt and vinegar. Like didn't have any of that with me or anything. So I sort of kind of was from the get go had in my head that he was a boy before we even knew. Like I'd said to Jimmy, it's definitely a boy, and he was like, all right, okay, whatever. And I was like, no, no, like it definitely is. Like it was all just a bit weird with that pregnancy, actually, because I knew that I was pregnant, um, and like couldn't get a positive test. Like kept coming up negative, so I must have ovulated a bit later
Mm.
than I'd realised. Because obviously you track it on these apps and stuff. I don't know why we're using apps for our body, but you track them, and then you think like that you've ovulated a certain time. And I like knew we were at a wedding and stuff, and I was like not drinking because I knew I was pregnant, even though I couldn't get a positive test. I was like convinced, and then I think probably Jamie was like, "All right, okay, like, you okay, hun?" But I just knew, you just have that sense of knowing. And then like I was actually going on a hen do on a Saturday, and I said, right, I'm gonna have to take another test here, and if it's not like I can't drink, and I think by that point I was like, am I just stressed? Am I just stressed? And I'm just period hasn't came. And then I did it that morning and got like a very faint positive. So it was a weird one. But yeah, I knew it was a boy very, very early on, and um that was hard because I kind of then obviously the experience with a girl like that she got home, I kind of was like, well, what if it's something around boys? That was kind of where my thoughts went to, which was probably like not a factual thing to think. But yeah, I was just worried about that sense of like, what if this is something that happens with boys that I carry? And I spoke to obviously consultants about it, and they kind of reassured me that everything's fine, and we had like extra checks and stuff. And yeah, I remember like there was definitely a little bit more hope there, like not as much sense of like he's not going to come home, but also that was always in the back of my mind. I think you prepare yourself, don't you? um
Did you feel like
yeah.
you were preparing yourself? Because I know you said that with Nia, you were kind of preparing for death rather than the birth.
Mhm.
Did you feel like with Sonny, I think you said, did you feel like you were less preparing for death, if that makes sense, and more preparing for the birth?
Yeah, like I don't remember really. I mean, there probably were moments of it, like what would I do if, but I don't remember specifically with him thinking it that much. Like I remember thinking, and I remember really trying to change my language with him, being like, when the baby comes home, or instead of, because with everything with me, it was like if, and hopefully,
Yeah.
and if, all that kind of language. I remember really trying to be intentional with my language with him. But yeah, it was just a very, very stressful time. Like, I don't, like, there's no two ways about it. We didn't actually, we were with Nia, we were in every 2 weeks, and it was actually very intense having to have scans every 2 weeks. So with him, we spread them out a little bit. We had them every 3 weeks instead, because I just felt like I was getting the reassurance of 2 weeks, and then you'd be sitting for 2 weeks stressing more. Whereas I kind of felt like if I can have a little bit more resilience and try and spread it out a little bit more, that was what helped me anyway. I know everyone's so different, but um, yeah, for me, it kind of felt like if I can spread it out a bit more, then it isn't going to be as intense for a nervous system to be in and out that often. Um, and yeah, we had to go to kind of Newcastle and get checked with him because my placenta was low again, and then because I'd had a section with Nia, there's like the chance of like having placenta accreta where it attaches to the scar,
Okay.
and obviously if that ruptures, it can be really dangerous. So I had to like get that checked, and that was all fine. But that was a really big stress because I felt like, oh, everything's going okay, and then it was like, oh, but this thing could happen,
Mm.
and it was just yeah, there was kind of a lot of worry there, but yeah, he's obviously, he was fine. Yeah.
And how was that birth as well? Was that because obviously the first one was a stillbirth, and Nia was very stressed with the um,
Mm.
C-section. How was the birth with him?
Oh, not great. No, yeah, I'd kind of planned. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just try and have a natural delivery. But even then, now that I think back, that was like a really stressful decision for me. I remember journaling like a lot on it and talking about it in therapy, and like trying to really know what I wanted. And like I remember, I'd got some support from the hospital actually in this pregnancy, around everything that had happened with Arlo. That was the first time like I'd got like mental health support. I didn't get any with Nia from the hospital. And I was like speaking to the psychologist and saying like, you know, and she was like, do you want to like have a natural delivery? And for me in my head, it was like, I want it to be different. I want to have this experience. And so I found that really stressful. But yeah, basically we'd went in for just a routine scan for Sonny at 38. When was he born? 38 weeks and 3 days. I wrote it down because I forget everything. But yeah, I went in just normal scan. I was getting growth scans just to make sure everything was going the way it should be. And I went in, and the doctor said, "Oh yeah, this." That they were like, "Oh, we're going to speak to the consultant after," which was normal for us anyway, because they said, "Oh, the baby's kind of lying
Mm.
sideways." And I was like, "All right, okay, they're just going to like talk to us about like, I don't know, moving him or turning him or whatever." And the doctor was like, okay, so obviously baby is lying sideways. They were like, so we're gonna get you booked in, and you're gonna be having this baby today. And I was just looking at Jamie, like I had clients and stuff. I don't know, I hadn't had that was my first day of that was my first day of maternity leave or something. It was like 2 days in maternity leave. I'd like planned to take 2 weeks because that's the way it was with me. I worked right up to the Friday and then had her on the Monday. Whereas I wanted to give myself a bit more time this one, that was
Yeah.
right. And so yeah, I like looked at Jimmy. I was like, sorry, and then he was like, yeah, because of your history, there's a chance that like the cord can prolapse if you go into labor naturally, and obviously then if that happens, there's like the risk of stillbirth again. And I was just like, okay, right. So literally, I didn't even leave the hospital then. I went in for scan. I was just wearing whatever I was wearing. Like I think I'd had a hospital bag packed. I think I'd like been able to pack my hospital bag. So Jamie had to go home, get my hospital bag. But like we hadn't eaten or anything. Like I hadn't had it was must have been like a mid morning or like appointment. I can't remember. But I'd only had breakfast like quite early on, and they were like, oh, if you fasted and stuff. And I was like, well, I've had breakfast at like 7 o'clock or something. So they were like, oh, great, that's great, because then you'll be next in line. If you're, and I was just going, sorry, like my appointment was at like 12. My appointment was at 12 o'clock. Sonny was born. What time was he born at? 4 o'clock. So 3 hours later, I had him in my arms. It was absolutely bananas. Yeah, but in a way, it was great because it took the decision out of my
Yeah.
hands, and it took the rest of the decision out of my hands. It was like, okay, yep, no, the safety of this baby's priority, so you're having him today. And so yeah, if I went up to my ward, and then that was it. He was born like 3 hours later. It's bananas. I remember just ringing my mum, being like, "Don't panic, but I'm in hospital. The baby's coming in like an hour." And she was just like, "What is going on?"
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was quite nice actually. I think just to be able to hand that like decision over to somebody
Mm.
else.
Did you find a sense
Yeah.
of healing that you then had a boy and that kind of connection to Arlo, or was it kind of the opposite where you found it really hard and this is what it could have been and that kind of thing?
It's so funny because I just see them so different. Like Sonny's like blonde, like really blonde, whereas Arlo was dark like me.
Mm.
Like he had like dark wee bits of hair, and like um I don't feel like Sonny looked like him necessarily as a baby. He like little features like his side profile and stuff, but um yeah, I don't know. I like find it lovely that I was having a boy and getting to have that experience of a boy. But yeah, there's times I think even now because Sonny's like 18 months now, so there's times where I see him and I think, oh, like what would Arlo be like? But I often do it more with Nia, which is interesting. But I think because she's closer in
Yeah.
age, so there's that sense of like all her milestones are only like a year behind what his milestones would have been.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, yeah, I think there's definitely a sense of like with a little boy, definitely for us anyway as a family, we see how different they both are. Like they are both just so stereotypically a girl and a boy, you know, as you would
Yeah.
think, like dress up, you know, dolls, like all that stuff, princesses, and then Sonny's just like dinosaur tractor mad, like in the village, just love tractors, trucks, vans, you know, and you're like, how does this happen? Like, you know, it's nothing that we're doing. It's just so I think there's when he's being like that, you're like, oh, what would he have been like, and like, what are we missing out on?
Mm.
You know, would he have been the same? Would he have loved the tractors? And you know, there's definitely moments like that, especially when I see children who are like his age. Especially my best friend who I mentioned earlier,
Mm.
like she was like 3 weeks ahead, and she had thankfully had like a little girl. Not thankfully had a little girl. Thankfully the baby was safe. I mean, but and probably also that she had a little girl too. That probably helps.
Mm.
But so like I see her and I think of him instantly because obviously they're so connected. In that kind of age group and space. So
Hard seeing
yeah.
her and spending time with her and her child.
Um. No, she's been like my anchor. Honestly, like I don't think I'd have got through everything without her. Like she is just the most amazing person. Crying and thinking about her. But yeah, I mean, it was hard, but I think we've been friends from like primary school. So we've been friends from like five. And when she had her little girl, I kind of went over to Belfast. I was over there, you know, anyway, and the baby was probably like a week, 2 weeks. And I like made the point of like going to see the baby because I didn't want it to be like a thing
Yeah.
between us. And like I remember holding the baby and then just crying and being like, "Oh, can you just take her?" Because it was too much. Because like I'd only held Arlo like the 4 weeks prior to that, 5 weeks, whatever it was prior to that, and obviously he was you know stillborn, so it just reminded me of that. You know, the weight of having a baby in your arms was that. But no, I think obviously it's hard because I see the milestones, but I don't like. There's nothing but love between us, and she's just so considerate, so understanding, so compassionate. Like um yeah, she's been a massive part of my journey, I think, and like such an important integral part of that. So I'm so lucky
Yeah.
because I know for other people it isn't the same. You know, it's not the same. So yeah,
Yeah. It's nice when you get, a solid group of people around you to support you because, like you said, not everybody has that. So the fact that you had that is
no,
amazing.
yeah. And it only takes a couple, doesn't it? It only takes a
Yeah.
few of those people to feel held in it. Yeah.
I've got a question. Um, if people ask you how many children you have, what do you typically say? Because this is always a tough one
Mm.
with infant loss.
It's so tough, isn't it? I think it's changed and evolved over the years. I think you know, at the start, prior to having any living children, when people would ask me, or I'd say, "Oh yeah, I've got like a little boy," or whatever, and they'd be like, "Oh, what age is he?" Or whatever, and I'd be like, "Oh, he was stillborn, you know, he would be," and then fill in the blank kind of thing. But and I think definitely with Nia, I felt like a real sense of like having to honor him when I was pregnant with her, and especially when she was quite young, you know, like little, and people would say, "Oh, you know, do you have any other children?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah," like I'd always say
Mm.
yes, and I'd almost get like upset talking about it or like angry or frustrated at people asking me. And then I think as time has went on, and I suppose I've, you know, learned more and looked after myself, and I kind of recognize that I don't always have to tell people my full story, especially like strangers who don't actually care.
Yeah.
I think part of me was like at the start a bit like, well, you're asking me this stupid question, so I'm going to just be a bit like passive aggressive, I suppose, back and be like, give you my full truth
Mm.
because how dare you ask me that? But I think as time's gone on, I just recognize that it's actually like a societal thing of it's just chit chat or it's just kind of people not really understanding the full extent of
Mm.
it. So I think like it definitely depends on the circumstances. It depends on how much capacity I have that day. Um, I'd say I definitely probably include them more, now if people are like, if I'm out with Sonny or on my own or with Ian, and then they'll be like, "Oh, do you have?" And then I'll say, "Oh yeah, like we've got a little girl, and whatever at home or whatever." Sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, my firstborn was actually stillborn," so I'll say things like that. But I don't. Yeah, it depends on the day and on the circumstances. Definitely, no, I am, and I don't. I'm not critical of myself or anything. Like I'm just like that. That's absolutely fine. You don't owe anybody your kind of story or your
Yeah.
vulnerability, I suppose.
It's hard because you don't want to like not mention them because it's like you're forgetting them or you're whatever. But then, like you said, not everybody deserves your full story. So like if it's a random person in the street you're never going to see again, they literally don't care if you have another kid or not. Like it's just chit chat, like you said. But then if it's somebody, I guess that you're
Yeah,
going to be friends with or see again, have that relationship, maybe then worth
yeah,
sharing. But it's I do find it's a tricky
mm,
one between like not honoring your babies and remembering them versus like yeah, I think I'm the same. It kind of depends on the situation and what mood I'm in and
yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
yeah. But I definitely recognize it's evolved a lot from what it used to be. Like, yeah, I think actually even when I was with when I mentioned with Nia, when I used to go to like the baby classes, I really held back from connecting with people because I just felt like, oh, people don't really get it. Like everyone here is either like a first time
Mm.
mum or like if no one had, and I'm sure people in there have had losses too. Like, it's not we're generally sitting talking about that, but I find that really challenging, like almost like quite isolating in being like a new mum to live in baby, there and then meeting other new mums and like feeling like, oh, did I share this? You almost felt like you were bringing down the like tone of like a baby class because they're all like lights and sensory and all that. So yeah, I think definitely I struggle with meeting people
Yeah.
because of that. Probably, yeah.
And have you told your children about Arlo? Or do you think that you will tell them when they grow up and things like have him as part of? Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, like Nia knows, but like I
She's
think the
young.
comprehension
Yeah.
and understanding, she's just like, ah, whatever. Because we've got a photo of him in our bedroom with like, I actually need to add one for Sonny, bless him. He's not in it. It's like a frame of 4 pictures of like Nia's birth, her like on me, this like when we just had the section and her footprints and then Arlo's footprints and me holding him. So she like sees the photo and she's like, oh, Arlo, and and then she'll be like, where is he? Or,
Mhm.
like that. And I'm like, oh, Arlo passed away, he wasn't well or whatever. And, I just kind of keep it brief because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously I'll tell her when she's older and can comprehend the full extent of it. But, she knows that he was there, but like, she never really talks about him or like brings it up unless we're in the room where, the photo or his ashes are or whatever. And then he's got a little teddy that she'll like want to take. And I'm like, no, like that's Arlo. You have to leave that there for him because, kids are mucky and I just don't want it getting all yucky. So yeah, like and Sonny, yeah, no, he's oblivious. Like he hasn't got a clue what's going on. So
That's lovely that you have kind of a photograph of him and a teddy bear. Do you have other ways that you honour him? Whether it's day to day or like objects in your home or things that you do or whatever it is.
yeah, I think like I will light candles quite often just because I like I'm thinking about him. Often if I've got a candle lit, that's probably why. Probably the reason why. Having like a tough day or something. And I think probably yeah, just like things that I do. Like obviously my work now is like dedicated to baby loss and supporting other people who've been through that. So I think in a way I'm honouring him through that and carrying that forward. Yeah, I did like a 10K run for Tommy's and stuff like that. But I think yeah, he just like obviously is in my mind quite a lot. I think about him day to day and just like little things. Like yesterday, so I was like writing some notes for this because I didn't want to forget like dates and stuff, and then like a little butterfly literally landed here
Oh
on
wow.
me, and I was like, oh. Yeah, and so like things like that. Like it's not that I think he's a butterfly or anything, but I just think like in moments of that, I like to try to see the beauty of it, like that maybe there is some sort of weird connection, you know, things like that. I think just like everybody probably, little moments where you're having a hard day and a feather is there or something, or like rainbows especially. I always think of them when I see rainbows. But yeah, just those tiny little moments of connection.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for being so open with me. I have a couple of questions that I ask people at the end. There's just 4 questions. It's just kind of so I can ask different people the same question and see what kind of comes back.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, what do you want other women experiencing infant loss to know?
I think I would say that your grief is like totally valid, and that you do not have to rush your grief. You do not have to make it acceptable for anyone else, no matter the gestation, no matter the weeks that you lost your baby. It's valid, and that however your grief looks is how that needs to be for you. You don't need to do it a certain way. It doesn't need to look a certain way. It doesn't need to be rushed. It doesn't need to be hidden away. And I think there is such a beautiful community within social media, and some places there's physical communities of support groups and charities, and I think you will find people who want to hear about your story and who want to support you. And I think seek out those people and give your grief some space, I think, is what I would say.
Yeah. I think the other thing is there's lots of different ways to lose a child, like lots of different forms of infant loss. And you might not find somebody who's been through the exact same thing, but there are people that have lost a baby a similar, within a couple of weeks, or a similar way, or a similar whatever it is. And so I think you can always find somebody you can connect with and kind of understand each other on like a deeper level, because you've both kind of experienced something similar. So I think finding someone like that is probably really helpful as well.
Yeah. And even if you find someone who had exact same experience as you, you're still going to be have had such a
Yeah.
different experience. It's never going to be the same anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, trying to find people in the space who have lost either pregnancy and babies in pregnancy, or, after that, infants and neonatally and stuff. So yeah, you're right.
You said about people experiencing things differently. I think even me and my husband, we went through the same thing, but we experienced it completely differently. If we were sat next to each other, like we both had completely different experiences. So even in that case, we didn't have the same experience. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so true, isn't
yeah. The next one is, what do you wish society knew about infant loss?
it? So much. I wish that they knew the impact. I think people see it as the baby has died, but that's the like a drop, like a stone dropping in the water. They don't see the ripple effect of it, and they don't see how much it seeps into daily life, into who you are as a person, into your mental health, your well-being. I think it affects so much of who you are. I'm not the same person who I was 4 years ago. I'm just a completely different version of myself, because I think people see it as the loss of a baby, but they don't see the loss of all those firsts. They don't see the loss of kind of memories and life experiences, and motherhood, and parenting journeys, and all that stuff. And also I think all the secondary losses that come with it, because people in society don't understand. You lose so many friendships, relationships, colleagues, work. A lot of people don't go back to work because the workspace have been so rubbish with supporting them through it, because they don't know what to do or say. Loss of income, how that affects your livelihood, your relationships, the strain. So I would like people to recognize that it's not just the loss of the baby. It's such a wider impact, and it's not necessarily something that you're ever going to get over. I don't think we move on from it. I think we move forward, but we always carry it with us, and it's becomes kind of part of you, comes etched in you. So
yeah, it's always part of your story. It's just a case of learning how to get by day to day without pads of tears on the floor, and how do I get through the day and start to heal, but it'll still always be a part of you. I think that's the other thing as well, like you said, you'll never go back to the version that you were before, because it just changes you in so many different ways. Even if you try and go back to that person, you just can't do that. So that's also yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's just that naivety, isn't it? That sense of you never get that back again, ever.
Yeah.
blissful ignorance.
Yeah. The next one is what helped and what didn't help with your healing journey.
I'm still on it, obviously, but I think having spaces where you can just be like in your grief, you can be heavy, you can be a mess. You don't have to kind of fix it. You don't have to. People aren't trying to fix it. I think definitely getting like support from mental health professionals who you didn't have to kind of perform for, you didn't have to be okay for, was helpful. What else? Also, like, I hate to say it, but obviously, because your situation is so different, but having children, I think, has been so like helpful in my journey moving forward, because I've got to be that version that I lost with Arlo, and I've got to be a mum to them, essentially. And obviously it's comes with its challenges, because it's really hard, because I wouldn't have them without him. I would never probably have had children that close together, had that been the circumstances. But so it's like complex. You have to hold that
Yeah.
duality, don't you? But it's definitely brought a lot of like joy and light into my life, and I definitely has supported me, I think, emotionally. I think what probably didn't help was the people, obviously, the standard stuff, isn't it? The, oh, at least you can get pregnant, or at least you didn't suffer, or all these kind of silver linings, I think, because people, they want to fix it, don't they? They want to make you feel better. They want you to have a solution. And I think when people rush to that, you can kind of feel a bit like your grief's been minimized, or that he's not as important, or especially when you go on to have other children, people can kind of minimize and don't not talk about him or not include him, and I find that really hard. But yeah, I think that's probably what didn't help. And also just like medical professionals not having the empathy, the compassion, the understanding that you've been through a massive trauma, and you're now back into something that is as traumatic, because your nervous system obviously just equals
Yeah.
pregnancy to something bad happening. And I think them not having the same compassion or understanding for me, when I was in very vulnerable situations, probably, that I find that not helpful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand that. And the
Mm.
last one is what advice do you have for partners, friends, or family members to help people with the grief and loss if somebody's gone through infant loss?
To count to 10 before you reply, before you speak, because often people don't want a solution, they don't want advice, they just want to be witnessed, they want to be heard, they want to be kind of validated in how they're feeling. I think if you can just take a step back and recognize there's literally nothing that you can do to fix this for them, there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can say that is going to make this person feel better. And it's hard, it's uncomfortable to sit in that. It's
Yeah.
not a nice space to be, especially if you're a fixer or a people pleaser, or someone who wants that person to be okay. But if you can just sit with them, you're going to get a much deeper connection in that relationship. You're going to feel more connected, and that you're actually going to be able to support them. Because if you shut them down and you say, oh, well, at least this, or maybe you can try again, or and you shut that moment down, they're going to think, well, that they don't get me, there's no point talking to them, because every time I talk to them, they minimize how I'm feeling.
Mm.
And so then you're going to isolate that person further. So
Yeah.
I think just giving them the space, and checking in on them as well. I think a lot of friends go silent because they think, oh, well, I don't want to check in because I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to upset them if they're not upset. But believe me, the person's thinking about it anyway. Like, you checking in on them is a nice thing. It's not going to make them think about it. So I think checking in on people, and also if the person isn't responding and not replying, that don't take it personally. This is nothing to do with you. They are grieving, they are sad, they are in a whole world of pain. And if you can hold that and be supportive towards them, your relationship will come out the other side. And if you can't, then then perhaps
Yeah.
don't say anything.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you said as well about like letting them sit with their grief. And I think a lot of people find that really hard. If someone's crying, they want to be like, oh, it's okay. Oh, no, no, don't cry, don't cry. Like, I've started doing peer support things. And actually, like, if someone's crying, I will just sit and cry with them. I'm not trying to make them better or, fix it. Or I guess it's similar to
No.
the work that you do. It's not about like fixing someone. It's just about having the space for them to
Yeah.
express how they feel and not having to
Mm-hmm.
have an answer or a solution or like yeah, just about being there. And I think, friends and family kind of understood that as well. That could be amazing if,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, if they just sit with it can be uncomfortable when someone's crying, but if you just sit with it and just be there,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so
Yeah.
powerful.
It is. It's so powerful because what you're saying in that moment is your grief is valid. This your baby mattered, whatever you want to say. But you know, in that moment, you're kind of holding them in their feelings, and you're saying it's okay.
Mm.
Like it's okay to be like this. It's okay to feel this way. Something devastating's happened. Of course, you're going to feel this way.
Yeah.
You know, you're not kind of trying to minimize it and fix it and tie a neat bow on it and push it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story with me. Do you want to say anything about your therapy services that you do and Instagram where people can find you and things?
Yeah, so I offer one-to-one therapy for people who have experienced baby loss, or people who are pregnant again after loss. I'm actually full at the minute, but I'm on Instagram, Roisin Therapy, I think. And yeah, so you can find me on there. And yeah, I kind of share kind of content on there, which is hopefully helpful for people, validating, I hope. And yeah, it's a good like nice little community that I'm building up. So join me.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so, so much for sharing your story and for being so open and vulnerable. And again, I'm so sorry for your losses. I'm so sorry you experienced that. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me and for having the space for people. I think it's so important to have these stories out there and to, you know, have, because I remember, you know, whenever, sorry, I know we're going, but whenever I went through my loss, I used to listen to podcasts constantly because it just makes people feel less alone. So that's why when you know, said, do you want to come on? I was like, yeah, definitely. Because if I can help, and I'm sure this is your why as well, if you can help one person feel less alone in their story, then yeah, why not? So yeah, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
thank you.
Yeah.